economy. Meanwhile, Sir Ed Davey's been seen playing dominoes during a visit to Somerset today, urging voters to help topple Conservative seats. His party's continuing their pledge to cut water pollution with plans for a clean water bill and a ban on bonuses for water bosses until discharges and leaks stop. Now, news from the United States, and President Biden's received his first public call from a Democrat in Congress, urging him to withdraw from the presidential race. Lloyd Doggett's hoping his colleague stands down, despite admitting it would be a painful decision. There have also been many questions about the president's future in November's election after he appeared to lose his train of thought and stumbled his words through last week's US TV debate against Donald Trump. That comes as Joe Biden's planning a meeting with Democratic governors tomorrow to reassure them that he is of sound mind and body. And some news just coming into us from the United States. The judge in Donald Trump's hush money trial has agreed to delay sentencing from July to September. Last month, the former president was convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. It comes after a ruling by the Supreme Court yesterday that American presidents do have broad immunity from criminal prosecution for official actions they take while in office, but not those they take in a private capacity. Just one last story for you. BBC address the issue of drink spiking in an upcoming episode amid an alarming rise in the number of cases across the UK. Anna Knight, who's played by Molly Rainford, will grapple with the impact of her drink being spiked while out on a night out with friends. The 5-part mini-series will also be accessible online to raise awareness and educate viewers. The soap's writers say they've worked with charities to make sure the story is portrayed as accurately and as sensitively as possible. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst, and I'm back in an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. £100,000. That's what it costs you, the taxpayer, to cover just one junior doctor who abandons their patients to go on strike. That's because the British Medical Association recommends consultants charge up to £269 an hour to take on non-contractual work, which includes covering junior doctors. So, junior doctors as well just ended their 44th day striking since last March today, meaning that it would have cost a hospital an extra £94,688 to cover the 44 8-hour shifts for each doctor that walked out. To be clear, and I think this is important, the BMA did call this strike during an election period, so no negotiation could take place. They want a 35% pay rise, and they recommend that cover work should cost a fortune to the taxpayer. It's remarkable, isn't it, really? Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting wants consultants' pay to be capped at time and a half when they work extra shifts, and Sir Keir Starmer last week blamed the Tories for not reaching a settlement with the junior doctors.
Not going to simply meet their demands. We can't afford that. What we will do is start negotiation to bring these strikes to an end. Now, I'm not in a position to say how those negotiations will go. What I am in a position to say is that there'll be grown-up politics where we actually resolve issues and get our hospitals back working in the way that everybody not just expects, but actually is entitled to.
But will things actually get any better under Labour? So the Tories are saying that Angela Rayner's plan to water down anti-strike laws will send Britain back to the bad old days of the 1970s. The likely next Deputy Prime Minister wants to make it easier for union barons to call a strike by lowering the threshold for member support for walkouts. Rishi Sunak today claimed Ms Rayner's plans to overhaul workers' rights will damage Britain's economy.
Angela Rayner is going to introduce French-style union laws into this country. Right, 70 of them, in fact. Right, 70 different new regulations, and that is going to mean that there's more strikes, that's going to damage our economic recovery, and it's going to cost jobs, because that's what those types of regulations do. Like, we don't have French levels of unemployment in this country, right? We've got a growing economy. Like, all of that would be put at risk if Labour are in charge and bring in all those regulations. So that's a very clear choice for you about growth.
Well, Wes Streeting has denied that he'll meet junior doctors' demands of a 35% pay rise. But what about reforms policy? They say they will wipe doctors' student debt.
And the Tories say we haven't got enough of them, but don't do anything about it. We will actually say that if they stay in the NHS for 10 years after qualifying, we will remit the whole of their student tuition fees. Because common sense says that if you want to encourage a particular pattern of behaviour, then you produce an incentive to do it, not a disincentive.
Appointments cancelled, people dying, no sign of the end of the strikes. Is the solution to end the strikes actually to wipe their student debt? Let's get the thoughts of my panel, shall we? So with us tonight we have got the Director of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. I've also got Esther Krakow as well, commentator and broadcaster and columnist. And I'm also joined by political commentator Andy Williams. Stephen, I'll start with you. Should we now wipe the student debt for junior doctors? If they stay in the NHS for 10 years, that will stop the strikes, won't it?
It won't stop the strikes, but I think it's a good incentive to think about, and at least somebody within the political framework is considering something outside of the box alternatively. I would have suggested not doing it all in one go at 10 years, because economics always shows that when that happens, a whole group of people decide to accept it and then possibly leave. I would graduate it like a bonus over a period of time, but leading to the same result, giving them the incentives that work. I think the key point, though, we're going to look at very clearly in this is that it won't stop the strikes, because until they get what they want, which is 35% as a pay rise, plus the other conditions that they require, they technically would still want to be on strike.
Well, Esther, I mean, there are now millions and millions of people who will probably never pay off their student loan, or certainly it might take them 40 or 50 years to do so. Interest rates linked to that as well. I mean, it's ridiculous in some cases, to the point where I know we've spoken about it before. There's no point, a lot of people, I think, going to university. But is it not quite difficult for doctors, junior doctors, to push back on something that says, look, in 10 years, guaranteed, your student debt goes?
I mean, that's one thing which I think is quite a positive development. It's at least something that's thinking out of the box. But I think the overarching point is we are in a global competition for medical professionals. So we actually have to make the NHS, if we're going to keep it as the NHS, more attractive, not only for people within the system, but people coming in as well, because we know that about 30% of NHS workers are from overseas. And I think that's what we don't really understand, because the system that we currently have is not flexible enough to adapt to the needs. The reason why junior doctors can act like effectively like a cartel and hold the country to ransom and say, pay us 35% and we're going to keep striking, is because the NHS is not flexible enough to be able to adapt to the current supply of doctors that we have in it. If we had a system that had better working conditions, for instance, and if we had a system that had market conditions that allowed hospitals to be more flexible with the kinds of staff that they have, how much pay they offer, how they can recruit better doctors from overseas for cheaper, then this wouldn't be happening.
All right. Andy, I put it to you that the BMA were happy for the strike to go ahead, despite the fact that it's during an election campaign, so nothing can be done about it. You can't have negotiations now. That's done. People will have died as a result of this. People will have got more ill as a result of it. And their recommendation to the people doing the cover shifts is to charge, I think it was about 260 odd quid an hour, £100,000 per doctor when you work that out. And Labour actually want to give more power to the union barons.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that a 35% rise, that ask, is completely unreasonable. I mean, nobody in the public sector, whether they deserve it or not, and there are arguments to make for all sorts of people in the public sector who deserve pay rises, 35% is just not even within remotely anywhere near what any reasonable government would accept. However, people's pay has not kept pace with inflation in the last 15 years. So I think there is some sort of settlement that needs to be reached. Where I agree with Stephen is that what we need in these negotiations is an injection of fresh thinking, of creativity and some new ideas.
Does West Streeting give you that? Because from what I can gather, the Labour Party actually just say, well, you know, here we go, we'll give the unions a bit more rights to strike, etc. I just wonder, Stephen, whether or not more people are going to die on the NHS under Labour.
Well, it may well do. That we can't predict at the moment, but it would do if we started seeing more strikes. What I think will happen is that the unions will be like Augustus Gloop at the beginning. They'll start feeding and feasting on as much of the Labour Party's new legislation. They'll push more for increased salaries, maybe better working conditions. But as they get fatter and fatter and the conditions in the economy doesn't improve, they'll start asking for more. And only then will the government of the day, under Keir Starmer, start thinking he's got to press the button to suck them up that tube, as you would do.
At what point, Esther, do you think, or have we reached that point, I don't know, where the public actually just think that these junior doctors out on strike are a bunch of wrong-uns?
Well, it's difficult to demonise the junior doctors because in as much as it's easy to do that, we also need them. So it's quite difficult for the public. I mean, West Streeting is, to his credit, has made some good noises about the fact that, you know, you have all this expensive equipment in the NHS that basically stays dormant over the weekends because you don't have incentives for medical professionals to work overtime on the weekends, so you can actually sort of try and clear those waiting lists, which is a good point. But at the end of the day, the reason why the junior doctors can act like a cartel is because of the market, right? There are not enough doctors. So if you have the few doctors in the country holding the country by its cojones.
Well done that.
Well, yeah, basically.
I wondered where you were going to land.
Well, yeah, exactly. They can do that. They can do that. Exactly.
That's lovely, yeah.
They can do that because there are not enough of them. So you can't.
Chops it up.
Exactly. The thing is, you can't blame them for trying to get a 35% pay rise because they can do it. If they were in another country where there is a plethora of medical professionals, or you had an economy that said, actually, no, get out if you want to, go to Australia, then actually they might be a bit more reasonable. But we don't have that situation because you don't see Australian doctors coming to the UK. It's the other way around.
Is it difficult, maybe, Andy? I mean, I think you lean to the left, for want of a better phrase, especially in light of what we've just been talking about there. But, you know, to say that the Tories, look, we are where we are with them now. Nothing new is going to happen with the junior doctors with the Tories now. That they've reached the end of the road, so this is where we are. Labour, it's a bit wishy-washy. It's, well, we'll start negotiations afresh, and maybe because we're in the room, something might happen that's new. Maybe that will happen, we don't know. But reforms policy saying, well, we'll wipe your student debt after 10 years, which actually was a policy that was drawn up off the back of expert think tanks saying this is something that could work. Is it difficult, do you think, maybe to acknowledge that maybe on this reform have the best policy?
Maybe they do, and the reason I say maybe is because I don't know how much that policy would cost. What I do know is that Reform's manifesto, other than the Greens, is by far the most expensive manifesto to implement. So if you're looking at significant hikes in public spending and all the warnings around Labour there, look at Reform's manifesto because that's spend, turn on the taps and leave them on. So I'll be interested in how much it costs. The other point I'd make is that last year, more working days were lost to strikes than in any day since 1989. So it's not exactly been going brilliantly. And as much as, you know, yes, people are getting fed up of saying, well, this is what's gone before with the Tories. It's not gone well. So I think this is another area where we do need a fresh start.
The question is whether Labour will actually be able to maintain that. I think at the moment the unions will give them some leeway. But the point is, as the economy will not grow under the economy policies that we're going to see under Labour, I can't see it happening, they're going to ask for more. And with union regulations and laws being reduced, do you not think, therefore... I don't
think, to be honest, I don't think Labour is going to be as flexible with the unions as we think. No. Because if Keir Starmer gets a supermajority and he can hold on to even at least two-thirds of that in the next election after that in 2029, he can literally tell them, actually, I don't care what you do because I have 5 years minimum to do what I want.
They could also say, all right, then we'll stop giving you money.
Well, it doesn't matter. He's in government for the next 5 years.
Yeah, fair enough, OK. But I think it'd be interesting because every single Labour MP would then end up on shows like mine or on other shows as well being asked, hammered on the strikes. Where are you? Do you not support?
Not if you have a supermajority. You can't peel off enough support. That's the trick. You're basically a tyrant.
OK, all right, well, we watch this space, don't we? But I think fundamentally it'd just be nice if more people were treated on the NHS. I think that's maybe something we can all agree on. But now, don't forget, GB News will be live in Essex on election night this Thursday as I host a very special watch party alongside the wonderful Michelle Dewberry and exclusive guest coverage and live performances after the polls close. I actually went there to have a look at it this morning, and it is great, all right? It really is great. So if you want to be a part of our live audience in Essex with myself and Jubes, just apply now, either by scanning the QR code on screen or visiting GBNews.com. We have hundreds of people who are already confirmed to be going. The venue can hold a couple of hundred more, and it will be an absolute riot. We are laying it on thick for you, so make sure that you do come. But still to come, leading immigration experts have slammed Labour's smash the gangs strategy. So could the Channel migrant crisis actually get even worse under Keir Starmer? Former Defence Minister Jeff Hoon joins me live in the studio. Plus, why is one Labour candidate massively offended by this?
Right, breakfast rolls, bacon rolls, porridge, who wants what?
The reason, by the way, is utterly mental. But up next, as a second candidate defects to the Conservatives, is it unfair to say that the majority of Reform UK are racist, misogynistic and bigoted? They say there is a massive stitch-up going on here. Political commentator Patrick O'Flynn is going head-to-head with former senior advisor to the Lib Dems, Pablo O'Hanna. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Criminal barrister Tony Wyatt. Tony, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Right, so talk to me. What have you been up to since we last spoke?
More writing and pulling my hair out. The state of our courts.
I want to get your view on a few things, then, seeing as you're a barrister. Rishi Sunak's come up with his Rwanda plan. Everyone sort of poo-pooing that. And Keir Starmer's come out with his border command. Is it something that may, well, stop traffickers from trafficking people across the channel?
The border command is essentially just another police force, isn't it, to just be dealing with immigration. I fail to see how it's new. I'm not entirely sure how it's new. We have that already. We have a border force. We live in a world where if you say there is a problem with this level of illegal immigration, you're immediately branded right-wing. I'm not right-wing. I'm nothing of the sort. But I can recognise a problem when I see it. That's a problem. That's too many people coming here illegally, undocumented, lost into a system. That's not a good thing. That can't possibly be a good thing. If Keir Starmer is going to throw a lot more people at it, then, yeah, that's a good thing. But it's hardly an innovation, is it? Immigration courts in this country have been absolutely crucified. They've been savagely cut. Where you may have dealt with 100 cases in a week before, you're now dealing with 10 because you don't have the judges, you don't have the barristers, you don't have the solicitors.
Same.
I mean, it's if you decimate the system by which these applications are processed, well, then you're going to create a circumstance in which the applications build up and build up and build up.
That's why we have a backlog.
Exactly. At the moment, the CPS estimates that we have about 75,000 cases in the Crown Court. The government would say 70, the CPS would say about 75. I'd say they'd know better, given they're prosecuting them all. They would say about 75,000 in the Crown Court, the backlog. That's up from 39,000 in 2020. Now, that's just the Crown Court. If the same thing is happening in the immigration courts, how are we ever recovering from that?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, bad news for Labour, isn't it? Because their flagship policy of smash the gangs has just been torn to shreds by experts. Former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon is on the way. But is it unfair to say that the majority of Reform UK are racist, misogynistic and bigoted? Are they victim of a massive stitch-up? It's time now for our head-to-head. Yeah, so this morning a second candidate for Reform UK quit the party and switched their allegiance to the Tories. So Georgie David was due to stand for Nigel Farage's party in West Ham and Beckton. She issued this quite bizarre statement, I think, really, through the Conservatives, saying, "I am in no doubt that the party and its senior leadership are not racist. However, as the vast majority of candidates are indeed racist, misogynistic and bigoted, I do not wish to be directly associated with people who hold such views that are so vastly opposing to my own and what I stand for." Well, in response, the Reform UK spokesman said, "We're very disappointed with Ms Davies' course of action. We strongly disagree with her sweeping comments about the vast majority of our 600-plus candidates, the vast majority of whom she can never even have met. We find it sad and strange that she chose not to bring up any of her concerns with the party leadership before publicly trashing so many of her blameless colleagues who are giving their all to get Reform UK elected." So look, tonight I am asking, were those comments unfair? And actually, in light of the fact that, again, today, Reform UK came out and said, well, hang on a minute, we think that there might be a bit of a stitch-up going on here, i.e. the Tories have planted people in the party to defect at the last minute and cry racism. Are they the victims of a massive stitch-up? I want to know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say, at GBNews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. And, yes, OK, all right. So, look, going head-to-head on this now, we have Patrick O'Flynn, who is former political editor at The Express, and we've also got Pablo Ojeda, who is a former advisor and spokesperson for the Lib Dems. Patrick, I'll start with you on this now. Do you think that Reform are being stitched up here by fake candidates that the Tories have planted?
I'm not sure I think there's any evidence for actual, the sort of conspiracy end of it, the fake candidates from the off, the plant theory. But I do think absolutely they're being stitched up. And it's a sort of classic big two-party stitch-up where the left want to stitch up the Nigel Farage vehicle for ideological reasons and the Tories want to say this party's not respectable to vote for reasons of saving their own skin. And I see the Tory party like a sort of salmon that's been washed up on a riverbank that's gasping for air, thrashing around for any way of attacking Reform. I think it's horribly unfair what this candidate, Georgie David, had said. And Reform have made the point there that she's hardly met any of the candidates. She was a paper candidate. She agreed to stand 6 weeks or so ago for a party that's really offering a policy slate that's perfectly mainstream, but just different from the establishment parties coming off the net zero treadmill, net zero immigration, more radical action to stop the boats and some quite radical tax cuts. Now, there's nothing racist about that agenda whatsoever. And it just reminds me, when I was involved in UKIP back in the day campaigning for Brexit, it was the classic smear. David Cameron, as Prime Minister, said UKIP was supported by fruitcakes, loonies and, quote, closet racist. All right. It rebounded, it should rebound again.
OK, look, Pablo, I'll bring you in on this. It's almost, is it like they're absolutely rattled by the Reform machine and now they just want to point the finger out and call everyone a racist and hope that sticks?
Well, I was thinking about your question there about whether this was a sort of Conservative plan, whether they were plotting and putting... If that is the case, it is the only good move that the Conservative campaign has made this entire time. I mean, their campaign has been a complete disaster. If this just happens to be the one time that they've actually managed to make a dent in this campaign, it would be impressive. But I think that the first thing to say is that if a female Reform candidate says that the party is misogynistic, I'm not sure that we, three men, by the way, can tell her that she's wrong. But on the point of racism, it's a spectrum. It's not that you are or you're not. People have racist characteristics and opinions, but they also have non-racist ones. Just because you like curry doesn't mean that you can use the P word. And not all Reform voters are racist. But all racists are going to vote Reform in this election.
Oh, come off it, man. That's ridiculous.
I think, I mean, that's...
All right, no, one sec. I just want to say, Pablo, what is your evidence for that?
Where else are they going to go? You don't find racists in the Liberal Democrats. You don't find racists...
Well, you found loads of racists in the Labour Party, didn't you? Because they had a massive anti-Semitism problem, Pablo.
And Keir Starmer did sort it out, to be fair to him.
Oh, yeah, that's gross.
I mean, I'm just saying that he did a pretty good job. He booted out.
So they're all going to vote reform now, are they, Pablo? They're all those anti-Semites.
Where else are racist voters going to go? They don't have anywhere else to go. I'm not saying that everyone that is voting for reform is racist.
Yeah, but you're saying every single racist in the country is going to vote for reform. I mean, Patrick, what do you do with comments? What do you do with comments like that, Patrick?
Well, I mean, I think it's deplorable and very sad. You know, Pablo comes from his position on the political spectrum. Georgie David comes from hers, and I don't think, incidentally, it does reforms processes of selection much credit that they chose someone that flaky, and I think flaky is the best you could say for her. And indeed, some people online are claiming that she was a plant from the start. But Nigel Farage has made it clear that, you know, reform as a start-up was really put up against it by an earlier than expected election, and that with a longer run-in and in future contests, it's going to do better. And I'm glad about that. But, you know, the issues that I set out that they're stressing, be it illegal migration, legal migration, the massively expensive net zero treadmill, the profile of taxes in this country, which are a massive deterrent to wealth creation. These are perfectly respectable, mainstream, even in the old days, less than a generation ago, you would say centre ground opinions. And yet we have the left pushing what they call the Overton window of acceptable views massively leftward. And unfortunately, we've had a Conservative Party that's gone along with it. I think the average Brit will sniff a stitch up here and will think, well, you know, the Conservatives warning about this Labour mega majority. Well, it looks like that's a done deal and it's going to happen, and that they might as well vote for what they believe in this time. And I think the Reform Party is going to do pretty well in this election.
Pablo, I just wonder whether the left on this country, you know, the Liberal Democrats in particular, actually, sneered at people who they thought were going to vote Brexit, to the point where they didn't really do everything they possibly could to win that referendum, and then they did their best afterwards to demonise anyone who voted for Brexit and try to overturn the thing. Have you not learnt your lesson, trying to do the same thing now with reform voters and people who want to lean that way? They must be thick and racist?
Absolutely not. Listen, I can tell you, I worked on that campaign to Remain. It was a terrible campaign. I knew it was a terrible campaign whilst I was there. I said it from the very beginning. No one wanted to listen to me. I'm sure I'm making lots of friends saying this. But I do think that I do actually think that there is a historic problem on that sort of spectrum of left to right, where it is seen that if you're on the left and you think, you know, a certain way about immigration or whatever, that you are kind of looking down on people who have concerns about immigration. I don't think that having concerns about immigration is at all racist, even in the slightest. But I do think that there are ways in which it is tackled and spoken about. And I think when you come from Farage's perspective, he has consistently used very strong anti-immigrant language that targets specific groups, that makes it appear racist. And I think that's the difference. I'm happy to have that conversation about immigration and migration, but we have to do it in a way that is balanced and fair and doesn't target certain groups.
OK, all right, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. That is Patrick O'Flynn there, who is political commentator and also former senior advisor to the Liberal Democrats, Pablo O'Hannah. I have a little clip now, actually, of Rishi Sunak reacting to this defection. It's also just worth bearing in mind, you know, that this person probably wasn't even a household name in her own home until, what, this morning?
Well, we've seen some appalling comments that have been made that I addressed last week, and you know what we have seen is candidates and campaigners openly espousing racist and misogynistic views, seemingly without challenge, and that tells you something about the culture within the Reform Party overall. That's questions for Nigel Farage. But on Thursday, there's a clear choice for people, and if you want your taxes cut, if you want your pension protected, and you want our borders secure, and you want to vote to prevent a Labour supermajority, the only way to do that is to vote Conservative, and that's the very strong message that these candidates and others are making it clear.
All right, so look, who do you agree with? Do you think it's unfair to say the majority of Reform UK members are racist, misogynistic and bigoted? Frank says, I'm still going to vote Reform. If some left-wing people want to call me those things, then so be it. My country and my people need to come first. Frank, I've got a feeling that most people who are already in that Reform orbit think exactly the same way as you. Barbara, on your say, says, these defections need to be fully investigated. If they prove to be a set-up from the outset, then that's election interference and should be prosecuted treated as such. The timing is just too convenient. Cast your minds back to when Reform was the Brexit Party, by the way, and when all of a sudden quite a few Brexit Party MEPs decided to stand down at the next election, or indeed accepted peerages as well. Is there not the whiff of that? Sarah on X says, there is no more bigotry, racism or misogyny in Reform than in any other party, and there is a coordinated effort designed to influence voters away from Reform. Your verdict is now in. 67% of you think that it is unfair to call Reform UK racist, misogynistic and bigoted. 33% of you say it is not unfair. Here are the candidates, by the way, for West Ham and Beckton, in case you are wondering. James Asser, Labour Party. Holly Ramsey, Conservative Party. Dine Romero, Liberal Democrats, Georgie David, Reform UK, although, well, anyway, and Rob Callender, Green Party, and Lois Austin, Trade Unionist and Social Coalition, Sophia Nakvi, Newham Independence Party, and Coyote Shadowo, Christian People's Alliance. There we go. Coming up, political stuntman Ed Davey tried his hand at surfing today, but what do the Lib Dems actually stand for? Is he taking the public for absolute idiots? I'm going to get the answer from their former MP. It's Norman Baker. But next, though, leading immigration experts have absolutely poo-pooed Labour's plans to smash the gangs, and Keir Starmer is accused of wanting to work a 4-day week as Prime Minister.
People think if you fill your diary 24/7 and don't do anything else, that makes you a much better decision maker. Yeah. I don't agree with that.
Oh, well, that'd be good then when something happens at 4 o'clock in the morning and he's just taking a bit of time off. It's crunch time for Labour, and the party's former Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon joins me live straight after this.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's not feeling all that much like July at the moment. Yes, there has been some sunshine around today, but temperatures have actually been around or a little bit below average for the time of year, and it is going to turn increasingly cloudy and wet as we go through tonight because of a system that's pushing its way southwards. Yes, there may be some clear skies to start the night in the south, but here it's going to turn very cloudy, and everywhere we are going to see a lot of cloud and then that rain pushing its way in. Some of that rain heavy across some parts of northern England. The cloud, the rain, and for some of us some blustery winds means temperatures are going to stay up, most places holding up in double figures. Bit of a soggy start then for many of us tomorrow morning. There could still be some heavy bursts of rain around, though most of that is going to clear away towards the east quite quickly. And in fact, by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning, across some central southern parts of England, there could be some drier, brighter weather around. A bit cloudier further north across other parts of England and Wales. And in fact, across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, we're going to see another band of rain pushing its way in. This rain could be quite persistent, though not especially heavy. A little bit drier first thing across eastern parts of Scotland, perhaps northeast England, but this band affecting western Scotland and Northern Ireland is gradually going to make its way east and southeastwards as we go through the day. So more places over northern England, Wales, southwest England perhaps turning damp again as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere there will be some drier weather around, cloudier towards the east, brighter skies towards the northwest with some showers mixed in, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, just about getting to the low 20s. On Thursday there's going to be a bit of a north-south split. In the north we can expect some blustery winds and some fairly frequent showers. Some of these could be on the heavy side. Further south though, across many central southern parts of England and Wales, it's actually looking largely dry and lighter winds here too, with plenty of sunshine. By Friday though, more of us are likely to see some wet and windy weather. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is
Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up is the Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey. Just all stunts, no policy. Frankly, I want to know if he's just taking us all for mugs, actually, just dangling something shiny in front of us and saying, come on, vote for me, and not actually telling us what that is. But first, leading immigration experts have torn apart Labour's plan for stopping the small boats. The party has said that it would scrap Rishi Sunak's Rwanda policy and use the money to, quote, smash the gangs. We all know that by now. By setting up a new border security command. However, Madeleine Sumption, who is the director of the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford, isn't convinced. In fact, quite the opposite. She told the Times newspaper that people smuggling networks would just adapt quickly to law enforcement tactics. And also, Professor Jonathan Portes of King's College London, who actually is a Labour supporter when it comes to their economic policy, said there was no guarantee that a Labour government will reduce legal migration either. Well, joining me now is the former Labour MP and Defence Secretary, Jeff Hoon. Jeff, look, thank you very, very much. So smash the gangs. It's dead in the water, isn't it?
That's one aspect of our policy, and I've always seen manifestos, and you're quoting directly from the manifesto, as a framework. They're not the only things that will be done in this policy area. There'll be a whole series of initiatives that will have the effect of reducing the number of people crossing illegally by boat. Well, for example, one of the things that we will be able to do, unlike the present government, is work closely with our European partners. We've made it quite clear that we want to discuss with the EU and other European countries exactly how this problem can be addressed, because it's not just a problem for the UK. Every country on the mainland of Europe actually has a bigger problem.
But Michel Barnier says you can do that if you accept being back in the single market.
No, Michel Barnier, who I know from many years ago, is a single voice. He's not speaking on behalf of the European Union. And I know from my experience of being in Brussels that the reality is the EU does deals. Okay. It does deals. I accept that may be one argument that they will make, but it will not be the only argument.
Just to be clear then, so are you conceding that the smash the gangs thing isn't going to work and you're going to have to rely on some other things that aren't actually in the manifesto, so we don't know about what those things are officially?
I'm not saying it won't work. I'm saying it will be part of a process of reducing the numbers of people crossing illegally. Bear in mind, of course, that they're coming from the continent of Europe. And it's extraordinary to me that this government has gone out of its way to be as unpleasant as possible to people that it wants to work with.
What about Marine Le Pen? I mean, is there not an irony here that Marine Le Pen potentially coming to power, or her party coming to power in France, actually could be a really good thing for Keir Starmer, because she will be our buffer, won't she, for people crossing the Channel? Would Labour rely on Marine Le Pen?
I don't think we're going to rely on her, and I don't think it's necessarily the case she's coming to power. There's a very determined effort in France at the moment to stop her coming to power. But nevertheless, what we have to do is work with those countries through which these people trying to cross illegally are coming.
OK, all right. I just want to move it on a bit now, because Sir Keir Starmer has accepted £76,000 in personal gifts. These things include hospitality, clothes, other gifts from British donors, things like concert tickets, football tickets. It's amongst the highest claimed by any MP in the last 5 years. I mean, if this was a right-wing Conservative politician, you'd be calling them a white boy on the take, wouldn't you?
I would not. And for one thing, the reason you know that list of items, and you quote, I'm sure entirely accurately, is because every single one of those has been declared.
Well, actually, you say that. That's not true, because in 2022, Sir Keir Starmer was found to have breached the MP's code of conduct in a minor and/or inadvertent way, it must be said, after he failed to register 8 interests on time. These included the use of the director's box at Crystal Palace Football Club. He also declared 4 tickets for Arsenal versus Watford 2 months after the game. Also declared tickets for his staff at the British Kebab Awards once the deadline had passed. So he's not exactly Mr. Forensic there, is
It's actually not uncommon for members of Parliament to declare them late. The issue is, have they been declared? And every single one has been declared.
Yeah, a bit late, though, and there's a lot of them, isn't there?
Do you not think it looks as though Keir Starmer's gettable? You know, for £500, you can get the potential new Prime Minister wearing one of your hoodies. I mean, what is he, a mannequin?
What it actually looks like, and I had a look at the list as well, is that he likes football. And the vast majority of these, as far as I've been able to tell, are attending football matches.
That's fair enough, but, you know, working class, man of the people, accepts impersonal gifts 3 times the average national salary.
Well, someone in his position is bound to attract that interest. People like the idea of going with him to a football match. I'm sure Keir Starmer, I know from my own experience, would much prefer to go on a Saturday afternoon with his son or his daughter, sit there in the stand anonymously, watch a game of football that he really enjoys, rather than being in receipt of corporate hospitality, having to wear a suit and tie and actually...
Well, he may well rather that. It's just amazing that he keeps doing it, though, isn't it? But, you know, just on that point, he has come under a bit of fire, hasn't he, for saying that he needs to make space for his personal life. I think I've got a little bit of a clip on this now. Let's hear that and I'll get a bit of reaction.
So on a Friday, I've been doing this for years, I will not do a work-related thing after 6 o'clock. Pretty well come what
Regardless.
may. Yeah. Some people think if you fill your diary 24/7 and don't do anything else, that makes you a much better decision maker. I don't agree with that. I think you've got to make space.
So would he be a part-time PM?
Absolutely not. And simply saying that he's trying to make space to see his family on a Friday evening or any other time. I always try to keep Sundays free. I didn't always succeed. Keir Starmer won't always succeed in keeping his Fridays free. He conceded that. If something happens, he will be there on the job dealing with whatever crisis arises.
Well, why do you think he said that? Because I wonder if that's, at minimum, a sign of quite deep-seated political naivety, actually, to suggest that, because it's allowed people to go, well, I think Boris was woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning to be told that Putin had rolled the tanks into Ukraine. It allows the joke there to be, well, Keir Starmer might be, dare I say it, you know, at some kind of hospitality event somewhere, you know.
Well, on the contrary, ministers, prime ministers have to have a private life. They have to have they need that break from the kinds of pressures that undoubtedly, if he is elected prime minister, he will face. And I think it's a wholly good thing. I think actually you should be saying this is what we want in the leader of this country. Somebody who has the recognition that his family are fundamentally
It's interesting
important.
though, isn't it? Because when Boris Johnson was in intensive care with coronavirus, we had some former prominent Labour voices coming out and casting some doubt as to whether or not he was faking that. And then here we are now with Sir Keir Starmer, you know, £76,000 worth of freebies there, one of the most of any MP in the last 5 years, and him saying that he wants to take a bit of time for his family, and we are being told that that has to be fine.
But isn't that a good thing? Wouldn't you expect...
My question is whether or not he would get away with it if he was a member of the Conservative Party.
Wouldn't you expect someone, whether they're in the Conservative Party, the Liberal Democratic Party or the Labour Party, to say, look, I've got a family, they are fundamentally important to me and my life, and therefore I am going to find time to see them. But he also went on to say, if there's a crisis, if there's a problem, I will deal with it.
OK, Jeff, look, thank you very much for your time, as always. It is always a real pleasure to have you on the show, so thank you very, very much. Former Labour MP and Defence Minister as well, Jeff Hoon. Now, before the break, I read a list, here we go. I read a list of the candidates for the West Ham and Beckton constituency. I now want to clarify some of those candidates for you. We've got James Asser, Labour Party, Holly Ramsey, Conservative Party, Emily Bigland, Liberal Democrats, Georgie David, Reform UK, Rob Callender, Green Party, Lois Austin, Trade Unionists and Socialist Coalition, Sophia Naqvi, New Independents, and Coyote Shadow, Christian People's Alliance. I really hope they're all correct, because I do not want to have to do that for the hat-trick. But coming up, I will get the views of my panel on Labour's migration policies. We touched on them a little bit more there. We'll go into some more detail. After Starmer today put stopping the small boats right at the top of his agenda. But next, Sir Ed Davey's been making waves again this election, hasn't he?
Yeah, good, nice one. Front foot, nice big twist, and your back foot, lovely, up we go. Really nice.
But have the stunts lost some of their sparkle? And are the Liberal Democrats, seriously, just taking us all for complete and utter fools? Their former MP, Norman Baker, spells out exactly what the party is all about, or at least tries to, and that's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
History lecturers at the University of Liverpool have been advised to problematise whiteness and heterosexuality in their seminars. They are saying that you should be guilty if you're white and heterosexual. Not using the long words they use, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but do you know what? History in this country is concerned with more and has been lived by more white people and more heterosexuals, right? And that's the history. I'll tell you something else, Don. This is Russell Group University material here. This is Liverpool. It's a really good university. Mm-hmm. The thing that really got me going apart from this, and I thought it was an AI generation of words input into a system to come up with from something. It's ridiculous. The main issue I have is the verb problematise. I've never heard of that before. Yeah. So they should be prioritising grammar. Let's get first principles back in there firstly.
It's just promoting anti-racism.
It's not, Amy.
It is. Wait. It's just bringing the marginalised voices into the discussion. So
no, what they're saying is look at British history through the optic of
all perspectives. So let's look at it from the perspective of a queer person growing up. Let's look at it from the perspective of somebody from...
But that's not the majority.
When I actually looked at the evidence, it's all about unpacking bias. And you have to admit there has been a white bias in history.
No, there hasn't, because the facts...
From a white perspective...
Amy, the facts are, in history, most people in this country are white and heterosexual.
Of course, but then there's still...
So that's the history.
...voices that deserve to be brought into the discussion as much as the dominant...
Look,
like, that's all decolonising the curriculum is hearing all sides of the argument. Which surely we at GB News love. We celebrate that. That's what we do.
We do, but we're not telling anybody it's bad to be white or it's bad to be...
Exactly.
That is not what...
Amy, it is. It is.
Amy.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I have got a slightly unexpected development to bring you now. Yes, that strap, if you're watching us on television, is right. It says Boris is back. I didn't know this was happening, but here we go. Boris Johnson has arrived to speak at a Conservative campaign event in London, which will be addressed by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak later this evening. He was greeted with cheers, claps, whistles, chants of Boris, Boris, Boris. And I can show you a bit of it now.
We restored democracy. We restored democracy to our country, and it was because we got a proper Brexit, and you will all remember how hard that fight was, that we came out of the EU single market and we controlled our own regulation. And my friends, whatever people may say, that national independence was vital when it came to approving COVID vaccines faster than any EU country, and therefore getting the fastest vaccine rollout of any major economy and the fastest economic rebound in the G7. And let me just ask you, in case you've forgotten it, because I haven't had a chance to remind you recently, which, of all the 200 countries on Earth, which was the first government, after all the miseries of COVID, to put a licensed, approved and effective vaccine into the arms of our citizens? It was a British government. Yes. It was a Brexit government. It was a Conservative government. Yeah. And it was thanks to...
OK, so look, that is Boris Johnson there. He is still going. What we're going to do is we're going to
clip up some of the best bits of this, OK, and we'll play that to you a bit later on in the show. Interesting to see him, though, isn't it? And that contrast there, when you hear him talking, you realise how kind of zippy he is and charismatic, regardless of what you think of his politics or the job he did as Prime Minister. It is interesting to see the personality. And I think maybe we should compare that personality to actually a man who is also just talking now, and I think we can take this as Rishi Sunak. Let's do it.
That we are about...
Isn't it great to have our Conservative family united, my friends? Yeah! Right. Just think, it was just the other day when Keir Starmer was saying that Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris. Yeah. Shameful. Can you imagine what that would have meant for Ukraine? What would have meant for our country's security, our defence? The damage it would have done to our economy. In both 2017 and 2019, Keir Starmer put his personal ambition ahead of our country's national interests. And that is just one of the many that over the next 48 hours, we must do everything we can to stop him getting into number 2.
All right, OK, so that's Rishi Sunak there. Now, joining me in the studio is Norman Baker, the former Liberal Democrat MP. Norman, I'll just get you initially to react to Boris Johnson there. I mean, I can't help but wonder whether or not, if he was still in power with that kind of charisma, they might be doing all right.
The first thing he said on that clip was about restoring democracy. He's the person who committed the illegal prorogation of Parliament to stop MPs from voting on constitutional issues regarding Brexit. That's what he did for constitutional issues and restoring democracy. And he's also the guy with Partygate. Let's not forget Partygate.
Was that worse than what the Liberal Democrats did for democracy by trying to have a second referendum?
No, a second referendum didn't happen, but if it had happened, it would have been done properly through a vote. He tried to bypass...
The second one because it didn't go your way the first time.
No, but we didn't have it. But look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that Boris illegally prorogued Parliament and he committed Partygate. He was out there drinking when the Queen was sitting on her own in church. That's what was happening with Boris Johnson. So Rishi Sunak is so desperate to get Boris back, roll it on.
I mean, some of the irony is that a lot of people also think that Rishi Sunak was one of the ones who stabbed Boris Johnson in the back. So
that's also true.
Is it a sign of desperation, really, that he's now standing there beside him with a couple of days to go and all of that? Yeah, fine. Right, let's actually whiz it on to the Liberal Democrats. So Ed Davey has certainly thrown himself into the Lib Dem campaign, hasn't he? Here's a reminder of some of the things he's been up to.
I'm enjoying this, honestly.
Yeah, but for me, the really annoying thing is, and if you're watching us on telly, just look at this, right? So this is from about 20 minutes before I came on air. If you Google Ed Davey, Liberal Democrats, this is what comes up. It is just headlines about, oh, he jumps out of a plane, or something like that. I mean, it's bonkers. I'm joined now by former Lib Dem Minister, as you can see, Norman Baker. Norman, I just can't help but wonder whether or not Ed Davey's just taking the public for kind of chimp-like idiots here.
I don't think so. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is it's very difficult for the third party to cut through in the media. He's managed to do that by his stunts, and when he's got the photographers and reporters there, he then talks about serious issues to do with care, free personal care, more doctors, better police and streets, and so on. But he wouldn't have the reporters and journalists there unless he got them there with his stunts.
They're not actually covering it. I do put it to you, I think he might be treating the public like idiots. Oh, if I jump off this bungee jump now, maybe they'll vote for me because they'll think I'm a nice guy, but they don't know what they're getting. And I also put it to you that he's actually preying on the bereaved, because Sir Ed Davey's stunt came on the day that the Lib Dems pledged £440 million annually on bereavement payments for widows and children. I'm going to read this announcement to you. The party says it would extend the time bereaved families receive support, though full details are not yet provided. I mean, that's actually quite cruel, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think it's another very firm pledge which the Lib Dems have made during this election. And the fact that you're aware of it now is probably because
there's nothing to be aware of, Norman. It says the full details are not provided. It's saying if you've just lost a loved one, if your husband's died, vote for me and I might give you a bit more money.
Yes, it might. You quoted a figure there, and when you read out a figure.
£440 million annually on bereavement payments.
That's a specific...
But full details are not yet provided. So what? You say... If you've just lost a loved one, you're at your most vulnerable. Go on, vote Lib Dem. We'll sort you out. We won't tell you how.
Patrick, I don't think that's a very fair way of characterising that. There's a serious issue which he's raised there. There's a figure attached to it. I think it's a serious matter. And I think Ed has done very well in this campaign by using stunts to then give the opportunity to talk about serious issues that wouldn't have happened before. And look, we've had Rishi Sunak, who's been gaff-prone all the way through and kind of tetchy. We've had Keir Starmer, who's boring as anything. At least Ed's a human being.
At least Ed's a human being. Well, there is some sense to that, I suppose. At least he has come across as quite human. Look, Norman, thank you very much, and sorry to have you interrupted at the start there by Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, but there we go. Anyway, it's Norman Baker, their former Lib Dem MP. Now, up next, Labour's migration plans have been torn apart, but could the crisis in the Channel actually get any worse? My panel are going to react to this. Well, the Labour Party said they're going to smash the gangs. The worst thing would be if experts came out and said that plan's a load of rubbish. And today, the experts came out and said that plan is a load of rubbish. Stay tuned.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
You're joking. Really? Seriously? It's not a line, what is it?
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God. This is amazing. I'm in shock. Like I said, I've never won anything like this. That is absolutely fantastic. We're over the moon. Thank you.
For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
the way to deal with it is to have a serious response. There are gangs that are running that trade.
it's disaster for Labour. Their smash the gangs policy has just been torn to shreds, and
people think if you fill your diary 24/7 and don't do anything else, that makes you a much better decision maker. I don't agree with that.
Can this man really be trusted to run the country? Plus,
right, breakfast rolls, bacon rolls, porridge. Who wants what?
Can you spot what's got some people very wound up about that clip? Also,
only the individual and one female behind the locked door of the changing room, and you know, girls have reported feeling really panicked by that.
I am very sorry to tell you that it's another day of shame for the woke NHS, because another female nurse has actually been suspended for calling out the fact that a man is in her changing rooms. Plus,
we just don't know. What I do know is that this is a stitch-up on the most astonishing scale.
have the Tories launched a Trojan horse attack on reform? And
I just wanted to play you 30 seconds of my song, and if you like it, I just want to get your reaction. That's it.
we have found the most annoying man in Britain. But get ready, Britain, because here we go. Two days from an election, Labour's key policy has been smashed.
next.
It's just after 10 o'clock, the latest from the GB newsroom, and with just 2 days until polling day, Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, has made his first appearance at the Conservative election campaign. In the last few minutes, he was greeted by supporters with cheers and chants. Take a look.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you very much, thank you. I love it.
Well, Boris welcomed Rishi Sunak onto the stage shortly after that at the event in central London, telling supporters he's come to help because he loves our country. Michael Gove also told the crowd that the Tories had just 36 hours to fight with every breath to save the country. Tonight's unexpected appearance from Boris Johnson follows Rishi Sunak's warning earlier that if Labour gets a supermajority, it will allow them to raise taxes. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has told The Times a big majority would help improve the economy. In other news today, Royal Mail has hit back at claims that there's been a failure to get postal votes sent to people in some areas. Bosses are insisting there is no backlog ahead of the general election in just 2 days' time. It comes after the Post Office Minister himself, Kevin Hollinrake, was said to be urgently investigating claims of delays in some constituencies. Now, the chairman of Reform UK, Richard Tice, has accused the Conservative Party of placing Trojan horse candidates in his party to spread lies. It comes after a second Reform candidate defected to the Tories, accusing some of her former colleagues of having racist, misogynistic and bigoted views. However, Georgie David said she did not believe Reform's senior leadership was racist. Reform say they disagree with Miss David's sweeping comment, saying she's never met the vast majority of their 600-plus candidates. Now, in news away from the election, there's been praise for an incredibly brave patient who prevented utter devastation at a hospital when he managed to stop a nurse launching an Islamic State-inspired suicide attack at a hospital in Leeds. 28-year-old Mohammed Farouk was arrested outside St James's Hospital with a pressure cooker bomb in January last year. Sheffield Crown Court heard how the self-radicalised Islamist terrorist had immersed himself in an extremist ideology and went to the hospital where he worked to kill as many nurses as possible. He was found guilty today of preparing terrorist acts. And also today in court, the family of a baby girl who was a victim of a former nurse, Lucy Letby, say they are heartbroken, angry and numb. The 34-year-old was found guilty of the attempted murder in February in 2016 of a baby girl after she dislodged her air tube just 2 hours after she'd been born. The 34-year-old's already the UK's most prolific child killer and is serving 14 whole life sentences for the murder of 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others. Now, some news that's just arrived to us in the last hour or so. The mother of Jay Slater, who went missing over 2 weeks ago during a holiday in Tenerife, says words can't describe the agony she's experiencing. Searches have failed to uncover any trace of the 19-year-old. Debbie Duncans thanked the Spanish police for their continued help, and she's asked for privacy for her family now. She also calls conspiracy theories that have circulated online and on social media extremely distressing. Just before I go, in sport, 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray made a big decision this morning. He's called an end to his Wimbledon singles career. The home crowd had hoped to see him on centre court this evening, but he withdrew after failing to recover from a back injury. His farewell will come in the doubles, though, with his brother Jamie in what will be his last time at the Championships. Meanwhile, it was a strong end for day 2 for the rest of the British camp at the Championships, with Jack Draper and Cameron Norrie both securing a place in the second round. They'll play each other next. There's also guaranteed to be a British woman in round 3, with Katie Bolter and Harriet Dart going head-to-head after they both won today as well. We wish them well. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, Sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The nightmare scenario for Labour is if the experts warn that their plans to smash the gangs won't actually stop the boats. Well, today, just 2 days out from the general election, the experts did just that. They say Labour's plans won't work. Now, figures from the Home Office show 85 migrants in 2 boats were picked up in the Channel and brought to Dover yesterday. We are expecting a series of record days in the coming months as human traffickers fast-track illegal immigrants through France in anticipation of Marine Le Pen deporting them, and French police leaving the beaches to make sure there isn't an Islamist terror attack at the Paris Olympics. But Starmer is still sticking to his plan.
Illegal immigration, we have to get to grips with it. We've got too many people making that journey across the Channel. 50,000 people have come since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. He said, I'm going to stop the boats. 50,000 people have come on the boat. Nobody but nobody should be making that journey across the Channel. The way to deal with it is to have a serious response. There are gangs that are running that trade. So the gangs are making a huge amount of money getting people to the north of France and getting them into those boats and taking their money along the way. And we need to break those gangs.
Yeah, so they need to break those gangs. He thinks he's got a plan. Unfortunately, as he was making those comments, they were being torn to shreds because the director of the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford, Madeleine Sumption, said the biggest claim in the Labour manifesto on small boats is that they can smash the gangs, that there can be an enforcement approach that can reduce small boat arrivals. I think that will be difficult to do because the smuggling networks are quite decentralised. There are so many people involved, and as long as there is a lot of money to be made, there'll always be new people to step in to fill that space. It's a pity, she says, that we don't get more detail on the Labour side about what they actually would do. There'll be no Rwanda deterrent, and there's nothing in the manifesto about getting a returns agreement with the EU. But Sir Keir Starmer did promise to put it on the agenda at the European Leaders Summit at Blenheim Palace on the 18th of July if he's elected. Lovely. Labour have said that they'll allow everybody who has already made it to Britain to try to claim asylum. The experts say their plan to smash the gangs won't work. But even if it does, how long will it take? How long would it take to negotiate a deal with the EU? 2 days out from a general election, has Labour's small boats policy just been sunk? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. Is the Director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. I've also got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, as well as journalist and commentator Andy Williams. Stephen, I'll start with you on this. So the Migration Observatory basically says that Keir Starmer's plans to smash the gangs is unworkable, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a load of cobblers.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a total failure. It's like his idea that he thinks that if there's a lot of rain, then we can have less boats coming over. And this is the kind of farcical and nonsensical policy that's been placed in place. When you look at the Oxford Migration Observatory, they're a very rational organisation. They've been putting a lot of input into immigration and the costs of it for many years. And for them to come out, who are not known really to be overly supportive of the Conservatives as a whole, and say that this policy fails, it's a very, very big deal.
Yeah, it's been quite a bad day for Labour as well, because Jonathan Portes, who's put his name to Labour's economic plans, has also said that he doesn't think that Labour are going to be able to reduce legal immigration. But Esther, when you look at this now, the smash the gangs rhetoric, we're going to smash the gangs, well, apparently that's just not going to work. And so what happens when he's got record day after record day?
Sounds like the Avengers, smash the gangs.
Yeah.
Do you think no one has thought of that?
Yeah.
Look, it's interesting the approach that he's taking, because drugs, for instance, drugs have been criminalised in this country for well over 50 years, and yet they have never become, they have become even more available than ever before, right? This idea that you can somehow fluff your way around this is actually quite bizarre. It's a market, right? It's supply and demand. You can try and cut off the supply, but so far as it's lucrative enough, there'll always be people to fill in that space. You have to kill the demand, which means that people that arrive here by those means should not have any way to get asylum. You have to kill the desire to actually come here, and that's how you smash the gangs. You have to destroy their market.
Exactly. And on that, what Labour is simultaneously doing, as well as saying smash the gangs, which again I'll emphasise the Migration Observatory has said he won't be able to do. What they're also doing is removing Rwanda, saying anyone who does come here will have the opportunity to claim asylum on top of that as well, and have not put anything about getting some kind of returns agreement with the EU in their manifesto. I mean, you know, is he just lying to us here about illegal immigration, do you think?
No, I think it's obviously a very, very complicated issue. It requires a multitude of solutions. On Rwanda, that's not a deterrent. I mean, we can just see very clearly that it's not a deterrent because the numbers have continued to go up despite that. And I know it's only just been passed and it's early days, but migrants are not standing at the border waiting for there to be a change of government, right? Rwanda is not going to be...
Well, I think we did see some pictures of them in France where they're actually looking forward to a Labour government because they think they can get across more easily. And they don't think Rwanda will happen because that's why so many are moving to Ireland. So it is having some deterrent for some of those people here.
Let's see, but I mean, so far the numbers haven't said that. And I think that Rwanda is a gimmick rather than a serious response to the problem.
It's interesting you should say that because it did work for the Australians. That's why we modelled it after them. It did work. I mean, it literally...
Well, they turned the boats back, didn't they?
Yeah,
that's... No, but they also took them to islands around Australia. So they didn't actually get to Australia. That's the point.
Where your point is correct is the fact that we just haven't done it effectively enough. And that's the point. We haven't pushed them back to France. We haven't put into Rwanda sufficiently strongly enough.
Well, why Rwanda? I mean, why a country...
We could do more.
I think your point on France, that's the key one. The only way, in my view, that this is going to be resolved, properly resolved and sustainably resolved, is to have an agreement with Europe and with France that says, actually, they will take people back. And if we end up with a...
What's in it for them?
If we well, exactly, I know. I mean...
There's nothing in it for them.
Well, what
This is the point.
conceivably could happen in France, and potentially, and there's a lot of ifs and buts here, you end up with someone like Marine Le Pen in charge, she might just start deporting a load of people, right? She might just start deporting, because this is...
But I tell you what she won't. I tell you what she won't do is she won't make an agreement with Britain to take people back. So I don't think that's not going to be a solution.
Nor will you. And if you look at the Dublin relationship that we had, the Dublin regulations, we only sent back 617 in 2016, but we accepted 1,007.
But
we took more in than we sent away.
And you talk about accepting things. Right now, literally right now, 2 days before a general election, I think the British public is having to accept from Sir Keir Starmer that every single individual EU nation state has not been able to smash the gangs, but by virtue of having him in Downing Street, all of that will change.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. I mean, this is the thing. This is why I find this approach of just using that ridiculous tagline of "smash the gangs." I find it very bizarre because he doesn't give the electorate enough credit for how unintelligent that argument is. That's the point.
Do you think this could be something that, you know, a little bit like Rishi Sunak stopped the boat? Do you think this could be something that actually comes back to bite Sir Keir Starmer because the timing of it for him is not going to be great?
I think the really important thing is that if it doesn't work, he's honest about it and sort of fails fast, right? So let's see. Just because it's not been done well by any other EU country doesn't mean it won't be by Keir Starmer. He has to give it a go. If it doesn't work, creative thinking, plan B.
I think it's a really interesting intervention by the Migration Observatory, something that's worth taking note of. As Stephen said earlier on there, they are not known for being certainly particularly pro-Tory or anything like that. They are pretty straight down the line, actually. In fact, they've actually been quite unhelpful to the Conservative Party on a few occasions recently. So for them to come out and say this stuff now, I think is worth listening to. When they say that they don't think this idea of smashing the gangs is going to work, you do have to think, OK, well, what is plan B for Sir Keir? But coming up, another nurse has sued the NHS after being forced to share a changing room with a trans colleague. But what they did to her will make your blood boil. Plus, why has this video of Rishi Sunak riled up Labour?
Right, breakfast rolls, bacon rolls, porridge, who wants what?
Well, I've got no idea either, but we will find out soon. But yes, Rishi Sunak has made desperate pleas for voters to stop a Labour supermajority. He says a hung parliament is in our grasps. Well, is this really the best that we can hope for? And he's finally smashed the glass and gone for Boris Johnson. We will be playing you some clips of what Boris Johnson has had to say. It's interesting, though, the irony here of Rishi Sunak in a room full of Tories cheering for Boris Johnson when they worked so hard to get rid of him. Former Tory MP James Heapy is live in the studio, and he's going to be answering all of that. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent, and it's traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service. Doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Ames, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician sense of we don't choose who we work for. You know, we are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural, and he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous, but then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, so it's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News. Now, very shortly, I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, but with just 2 days to go until the voters go to the polls, Rishi Sunak has made a last-ditch attempt to rally Tory supporters today. He highlighted a recent YouGov poll suggesting that if only 130,000 voters switch to the Tories, then Labour will be denied a majority. But get this, this is the line of the evening. He's even called in Boris Johnson, who got this rock star's welcome at a rally in central London just moments ago.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you very much, thank you. I love it.
Well, so Boris is back, everybody, and he was warning about the dangers of a Labour majority.
If these polls are right, then at the very moment when this country has beaten COVID and beaten post-COVID inflation, at the very moment when we should be encouraging enterprise and growth and putting some money into home ownership and putting some money into people's pockets, Westminster is about to go in diametrically the opposite direction. And so none of us can sit back as a Labour government prepares to use a sledgehammer majority to destroy so much of what we have achieved, what you have achieved.
I'm joined now by former Conservative Minister James Heappey. James, look, thank you very much. Surely the irony is not lost on you. Of Rishi Sunak, the man who many people think stabbed Boris in the back, a room full of Conservatives there cheering Boris, Boris, Boris. What, they shouldn't have got rid of him then, should they?
Nope.
Thank you, James, for joining us tonight here on TV News. No, but I mean, OK, what do you make of that? Is it desperate, or does he just have to do it strongly?
No, I mean, the guy's got a star appeal. He cuts through with voters in a way that almost nobody else in UK politics does. And who better to come out, even at the 11th hour, and just land the message that the party campaign has struggled to land throughout the campaign. He will cut through with voters in a way that 1,000 interviews with current members of the Cabinet on the morning media round won't.
So why has he left it so late, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think Boris has been on a few holidays and...
writing a book, I believe,
yeah. Exactly. So look, and he's not the party leader anymore. And moreover, I suspect that at the start of the campaign, Number 10 probably thought they weren't going to need to call on Boris at all.
That's a good point. Right, so here we are, a couple of days out now, and the glass has been smashed and the Boris Johnson figurine has been taken out of it and plumped in front of a microphone. And everyone's going, oh, gosh, I remember this guy, actually. Oh, he's quite charismatic, isn't he? He's the kind of person that maybe, just maybe, people might be convinced to vote for. And you wonder whether or not, actually, he should have played a bigger part in this entire campaign.
Yeah, of course. And look, I'm a biased actor. I was his parliamentary private secretary before the 2019 general election, and I was saying to colleagues all the way up until the moment that they kicked him out, don't think that what happens tomorrow is that everything gets better, right? The Conservative Party will take years to recover from kicking out a Prime Minister that won an 85 majority.
How responsible was Rishi Sunak for that?
Look, I think that all of that is well rehearsed, and I'm back on 10 o'clock on Thursday night after the polls have closed, and I think that's the moment for recrimination and analysis. Okay. Where we're at the moment is that the Prime Minister needed to land a message. The public haven't been listening too enthusiastically to the Conservative Party over recent weeks. You wheel out Boris, it leads the news, everybody's talking about it, and the message will land.
Right, OK, well, we'll have to wait and see. Now, there's been a couple of interesting developments there. So, a second Reform Party candidate is now defected to the Tories. Georgie David has slammed Nigel Farage's party. She basically claims that Reform is racist, misogynistic and bigoted. But Reform, through the medium of the partner of their chairman, Richard Tice, Isabel Oakeshott, the journalist, have claimed that Reform is the victim of a Trojan horse plot by the Tories, saying desperate Tory party gets fake candidates to join Reform, then quit at the last minute, shrieking racism. Have the Tories infiltrated Reform and done this, do you think?
So, this gets right. So the party that chose to call a general election on a date and time of its choosing without checking the weather forecast, that put its leader in front of a Morrison sign that allowed a photographer to delete a couple of letters so it said moron, put him in front of an exit sign, and then sent him to the Titanic Quarter in Belfast. By all accounts in the media 5 weeks ago, the political operation in Number 10 couldn't organise a piss-up in a brewery. But somehow they were able to place sleeper cells into Reform months ago that were going to self-destruct at a moment of Rishi Sunak saying in order to... come on.
I mean, they could have been nobbled, though, I suppose. I mean, I suppose the thinking is they could have been nobbled. Let me rephrase then. I absolutely take your point there. But do you think that there is any merit to the idea that Reform is racist? Because I would caution you maybe to think, calling people who are going to vote for Reform racist is possibly not a great thing for the Conservative Party to do.
Well, look, I don't think that it pays to be rude about any other party's voters, because what you would prefer is they were voting for you. And as a rule of thumb, people tend not to vote for you if you've just insulted them. I do, however, think that what we've seen of various elements within Reform over the last few weeks has caused plenty of people who wanted to give the Conservative Party a bloody nose and considered Reform to be an alternative to the Conservative Party in all but name, will now reconsider on the back of what they've seen. And look, it's not the Conservative Party that has said this about Reform. It's somebody who's defected from Reform, having been on the inside of their ranks.
I mean, look, this is anecdotal, right? So it is anecdotal. But, I've talked to quite a few people out and about. I think a lot of people are genuinely of the mind that the media, the establishment media, is quite rattled by reform. They don't particularly like Nigel Farage, and that a lot of things, like that canvasser who was out and about, can be very easily blown up and turned into a big issue, reinforced perhaps by some quite questionable audience members on a BBC Question Time special. I think there is serious cut-through to the idea that there is a bit of a stitch-up going on here against reform. Do you just not buy that at all?
No, look, I mean, I think what there is the scrutiny that comes to any party that thinks that it is a serious contributor to our nation's politics. And more than that, I mean, Nigel Farage has done the full Joe Swinson and said that he's a future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, if you say that, you invite the level of scrutiny that all of the other candidates to be Prime Minister get, and you shouldn't complain when you get it. It is, in fact, the compliment that the media pays to people that are being taken seriously, that you and your party are properly held to account.
Sorry, very quickly on this then. Rishi Sunak's latest line, which is, we are on course for a hung parliament. I mean, what do you make of that? Is that going to encourage people to go out and vote for a hung parliament?
Well, with the danger that that's your last question, I firstly want to say congratulations to you and Emily. May you have a long and happy life together.
Your flattery will get you everywhere, because you know we're out of time. But go on, carry on.
So look, that was exactly the sort of message that we were delivering back in 2015. You know, we were delivering leaflets in Lib Dem Conservative marginals saying there's one of about 39 seats from memory that will make the difference between David Cameron, long-term economic plan, and coalition of chaos with Miliband, Clegg, Salmond. And it does, in these last few hours, breaking down an electorate of 60 million and 650 seats into 100 seats where 10,000 people either way makes the difference, can motivate people at that 11th hour. So I do think it's a good strategy, even if I think the die is probably cast by now, to be honest, Patrick.
James, lovely stuff. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Yeah.
I believe it's about 10 p.m, so thank you very much. All right, OK, now coming up, should female NHS nurses be forced to get undressed in front of a trans colleague? Well, it's happening across England and Scotland, and actually, they are being, well, they'll be suspended if they speak out about it. I'll tell you in a bit more detail later. But next, I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages to bring you, and my panel will return for the headlines. So make sure you stay tuned for that.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's not feeling all that much like July at the moment. Yes, there has been some sunshine around today, but temperatures have actually been around or a little bit below average for the time of year, and it is going to turn increasingly cloudy and wet as we go through tonight because of a system that's pushing its way southwards. Yes, there may be some clear skies to start the night in the south, but here it's going to turn very cloudy, and everywhere we are going to see a lot of cloud and then that rain pushing its way in. Some of that rain heavy across some parts of northern England. The cloud, the rain, and for some of us some blustery winds means temperatures are going to stay up, most places holding up in double figures. Bit of a soggy start then for many of us tomorrow morning. There could still be some heavy bursts of rain around, though most of that is going to clear away towards the east quite quickly. And in fact, by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning, across some central southern parts of England, there could be some drier, brighter weather around. A bit cloudier further north across other parts of England and Wales. And in fact, across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, we're going to see another band of rain pushing its way in. This rain could be quite persistent, though not especially heavy. A little bit drier first thing across eastern parts of Scotland, perhaps northeast England, but this band affecting western Scotland and Northern Ireland is gradually going to make its way east and southeastwards as we go through the day. So more places over northern England, Wales, southwest England, perhaps turning damp again as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere, there will be some drier weather around, cloudier towards the east, brighter skies towards the northwest with some showers mixed in, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, just about getting to the low 20s. On Thursday, there's going to be a bit of a north-south split. In the north, we can expect some blustery winds and some fairly frequent showers. Some of these could be on the heavy side. Further south, though, across many central southern parts of England and Wales, it's actually looking largely dry and lighter winds here too, with plenty of sunshine. By Friday, though, more of us are likely to see some wet and windy weather. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. It's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight now with the very first front pages. Let's do it. OK, it's the Metro. Report reveals Gaza protesters targeted. Unis are spying on students for the police. This is email exchanges revealing cosy links with officers. Universities are collaborating with the police to spy on students involved in protests over the conflict in Gaza. Good. It's a good thing. We might discuss that later, but yeah, I'm sorry. If they're going to kick the backside out of university buildings and ruins people's experiences, and shouldn't they be reported to police? But anyway, Independent. The final poll, Tories brace for total wipeout. Exclusive polling for the Independent shows that Labour is heading for a landslide on 40%, almost double the Conservatives on 21%. That would give Starmer a 200-seat majority, apparently, according to the Independent. Let's go to the Eye. Prisons crisis for new government on day one, with cells full and one in, one out plan. So, Britain's prisons are days away from being full, the Eye learns, with officials preparing emergency measures because controversial early release scheme to ease overcrowding has not worked. Interesting, that, isn't it? So we're releasing people early and the prisons are still full. So that's great, isn't it? Let's go to the Daily Mail. Boris and Rishi unite to stop Starmageddon. Ex-PM answers Sunak's call and electrifies activists at the final Tory rally. So we've heard a bit about that tonight already, and we've played you a couple of clips of that tonight already, which is that Boris Johnson was back, wasn't he? He was there campaigning for Rishi Sunak, for the Conservative Party. Well, I'm joined now by my press pack, the director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, and political commentator Andy Williams. Yeah, I mean, Boris being back and campaigning for the Tories, we were talking about it a little bit there, but to me it just feels quite desperate, Stephen, actually. It feels a bit like the man who stabbed him in the back, full of a room full of people who could have stood up and stopped Boris being deposed, if they'd wanted to, are now cheering and going, look how great this is, Boris is here, oh, you should vote for us now. It's weird. I find it weird.
It's pathetic. I find it sad. I find it really utterly sad that the Conservative Party feel that they have to bring back the person they've stabbed in the back. I keep wondering, you know, it's Cicero or Caesar, you know, are the knife wounds still there? Have they sewn them up just before he's got back? And what is even sadder is that Boris has decided that he will actually go through this farce for them. So what is in it for him? So you have to ask yourself, he would not do this unless he had something.
I think I do know what's in it for him, which is the limelight. He absolutely... He knew that if he turned up in that room tonight at the end of a lacklustre Tory campaign, he knew that he'd get cheered to the rafters, and he absolutely loves it. And he knew he'd upstage Rishi Sunak. These guys hate each other, and he's fully upstaged him.
All right, Esther, I'm going to pause this and come to you first on this next story, if that's all right. So, a female worker is now suing a Scottish NHS board after she was suspended from her job for complaining about having to share a changing room with a trans woman, i.e. a man. Now, the complaint came when she was said to have been in a changing room late at night last year and a trans colleague started to undress in front of her. That saw her get a 3-month suspension for speaking out about this, although she's now back at work. A spokesperson for NHS Fife said, we're unable to comment on matters relating to individual members of staff for reasons of confidentiality, but NHS Fife is an inclusive employer and is committed to ensuring a safe and welcoming working environment for each and every member of staff. Well, you might remember, actually, that last week, it was on Thursday, I think, I spoke to nurses from Darlington who are suing the NHS for exactly the same thing. Look, Esther, you know, your colleague there, who was suspended, a female colleague, for saying, I don't want a man in my changing room. I mean, is this...
Well, this is the fault of the policy, the NHS policy, for not being clear on this. Because if they stated unequivocally that biological men
that identify as women can now use the same changing rooms as women, there'd be nothing to sue them for, because they've been very clear about the policy. If you don't like it, go and find a different NHS trust to work for. But this ambiguity has now opened a can of worms. I completely understand this lady's discomfort. I mean, I remember being a girl in school and not even wanting to be in, like, share a bathroom with a guy because I don't want them to hear me opening a pad or opening a tampon. Like, it's that psychologically uncomfortable. And so anyone that's trivializing this or saying, oh, but, you know, trans people don't go out of their way to make you uncomfortable, it's just them living their lives, I think they're asking far too much of biological women. The reality is there needs to be a third option, because there's no way this can continue.
Yeah.
This is something that uniquely affects women. You don't see men, you know, feeling uncomfortable by having trans women. What would the trans men in men? I can't even think about the opposite, because it doesn't happen. This doesn't affect men.
Yeah, I mean, there's also it's a similar thing to the sports idea, isn't it? It's like if a woman became a man, as it were, well, it's very unlikely they're going to win gold at the 100 metres.
They wouldn't even show up.
Right, exactly. So
they wouldn't be at the tournament.
There's a key difference there. And, yeah, Andy, I want your view on this, because the case of the ladies in Darlington, what they were saying was that the man who was in their changing room had all the, appendage and was sexually active with his girlfriend and tried to get her pregnant and was lingering too long. I mean, they did describe someone who, whilst I'm sure that person would deny it, would sound a bit like a potential predator. Why is this being allowed in the NHS, do you think? Should it be?
I think the NHS are obviously trying to accommodate everybody in an equal way, and the result of doing that is a sort of fudge, a really unclear policy, as Esther has described. I mean, in general, I don't like the tone of this debate as we see it in a lot of the media. I think we were just talking in the break there in a way that was much more constructive, looking at solutions for people.
Well, let's do that. What is it?
Yeah, well, it's about that. I think you absolutely have to have respect for people who describe themselves as trans women or trans men, and I don't think it's appropriate to demonise them or whatever, but I also think it's equally important, to not leave women who identify as women in a situation where they feel intimidated or threatened.
Or dare I say it, Stephen, suspend them if they speak out about it.
Well, I think it's appalling that the NHS Trust has suspended the woman for making a complaint that a biological man describing himself as a trans woman is allowed to be in that room with them. Whether the rules are saying it was misconstrued, whether the rules are clear, it's still an important factor that you should be assessing the needs of 51% of the community. 51% who've had to deal with men who controlled their lives for hundreds of years, who fought incredibly hard to be able to get the vote, to be recognised for the achievements that they do, be able to equal in work. And when we've talked about it rationally, we've talked about the fact that the trans community also has to take it on board themselves, that many within their community are being very aggressive, are being quite rude, are being nasty towards their opponents. And they too should take responsibility and think hard about how they should approach this. And in fact, they should say, let's be asking for our own rooms, our own places to share, and leave those to women alone.
OK, Esther, do you think that the burden here is on the trans community to say we want our own spaces as opposed to wanting yours?
Well, of course. You can't expect half of the population to budge for the 10 trans people that exist in the UK. It's just completely unsustainable. OK, but I suppose the argument might be only that there's quite a bit of fear out there from women, maybe, and employees, that if they spoke up about something that they weren't particularly happy with, that they then might get a label on them, like they're a transphobe or suspended. So is there a culture or an environment where women maybe don't... It distorts the amount of pro-trans people that there are when it comes to being in women's spaces because so few people feel comfortable speaking out about it, I wonder.
I think the whole debate distorts the number of the number of pro-trans people and the number of anti-trans people there are, actually. I think the vast majority of people look at this in a sensible way and think, actually, there is a dimension of respecting those people but also protecting women.
Would you be in favour, do you think, broadly speaking, of a third space?
In principle, yes, but as long as it was positioned in a way that demonstrated that those people were given respect and weren't being sort of marginalised or siphoned off to the side.
Fundamentally, we're talking about things like a changing room, right? Which should be just quite a functional room.
Absolutely.
You go in, you get changed, you leave. It's not a golf club, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you go and I would hope that maybe we could get to a position where people see that as that's a room you go into to get changed, and you know, that's that. It's not about socialising and things, but I don't know, maybe not. We'll wait and see. But now, another plane has forced to make an emergency landing yesterday after dozens of passengers were injured during severe turbulence. A total of 30 people were taken to hospital following the incident on board the Air Europa flight from Madrid.
Wow.
Several seats and the ceiling of the aircraft were also badly damaged. Now, one clip appeared to show a passenger being saved after he was reportedly thrown into an overhead compartment. So this is what you're watching now. I'll talk over it. So, yeah, the lights are coming on and off a bit there, which is not great for a start. But this is a person's feet. They are... Have we stopped, have we, the video? Yeah? It looks like we might have stopped it. Anyway. Oh, well. Well, anyway, that person has to be helped out of the overhead locker, which is apparently where they bounced into. It's terrifying, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But there we are. I mean, oh, well, it feels to me a little bit like this is happening more.
I'd never heard of this until about 2 months ago, and that's about 3 or 4 incidents in a really short period of time.
It is.
I just wondered whether this is Starmer's policy of trying to stop the boat.
Here he is. Yeah, he is. Managing to crowbar the small boat into absolutely anything, which, of course, I would never dare do. I would never dare do something like that. But I do wonder if there's something going on. I'm not trying to, you know, drink the Kool-Aid here or anything like that, but it does seem like there's more of this kind of stuff. And just as if to prove my point, it does come just weeks after a 73-year-old British man sadly died during severe turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight from London. But in other news completely, don't forget, GB News will be live in Essex as part of our election night watch party with Michelle Dewberry and myself. We've got exclusive guests, great coverage. And you know what? I'm just going to say this as well. Yes, there are 2 bars, OK? So you can come, you can enjoy yourself, you can have a great time, and there's free food as well. So maybe, even if you don't like politics or news, just come because you're hungry and thirsty. If you want to be a part of it, for our live audience in Essex with Jubes and me, just apply now. There's a QR code on your screen. So hover your phone over that, let us do it thing, or go to gbnews.com. We've got hundreds of people coming already. There is room, I think, roughly speaking, for a couple of hundred more, but it's a long event. Do turn up. It will be a great laugh, and I, for one, am really looking forward to meeting you. I was there checking it out earlier today, and we had a great time. So it's all shaping up. So come on, be part of it. It's a big night in the old political and news calendar, isn't it? And you can get yourself on the telly. But coming up, the crowning moment of the show, where I decide tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass, and I finally reveal what is apparently so offensive about this video of Rishi Sunak handing out McDonald's.
Right, breakfast rolls, bacon rolls, porridge, who wants what?
Yeah, well, apparently one Labour candidate has managed to turn that into a class war. So stay tuned, and for that, as well as more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
We've been talking about the White House is concerned with playing down concerns about the health of President Biden, who's apparently taken to freezing during public events. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was seen herding the president back into a photo with world leaders after he shuffled aimlessly away from the group. In the last few days, videos and images of the president freezing at a fundraising event went viral, but the White House stated that they were deceptively edited cheap fakes. With me now, again, is my panel, the historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop and the associate comment editor of The Telegraph, Mujaz Ahmed. Mujaz, I mean, you are a journalist. What about this idea that in some way the images could be fake?
They could be fake, and some of them will be fake, but the reason these AI images or AI videos or weirdly edited videos are a problem for the White House is that people have seen enough of Biden freezing in real life.
It's not going away, this one. It's perception versus reality, but as Mustafa said, it doesn't matter because it's now become Biden's reality, which is bushfighting these questions about his ability connected to his age. I don't understand where you go from here. He's got a vice president who isn't presidential material, who I think polls worse than he does, despite these, you would call them ageist. In many ways, it's about his competence, isn't it?
It can make a big difference when the president whose competence, mental competence, is under question, is running on the matter of competence itself. They're trying to paint Trump as being incompetent, as being not presidential, as being unable to lead, while they have a candidate who struggles to get off the stage. Yeah. That's the issue for them. And it's not really about age. He's not much older than Trump, as you say. It's about the appearance of age.
GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I have got some more front pages for you now, so here we go. The Guardian, interesting front page this. Backlash over, quotes, anti-Semitic Tory attack on Starmer. So this is him, Keir Starmer, saying, you know, paraphrasing again here, he didn't really want to do much after 6 p.m. on a Friday. The Friday night dinner implication there, his wife is Jewish. The backlash from the Tories, apparently the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews has said that this is basically anti-Semitic. I'm not really sure I agree with that, but we can discuss. The Daily Express, Rishi, your vote counts, your vote counts. Please use it wisely, OK? And in an impassioned appeal to wavering voters, Rishi Sunak has warned that anyone voting Reform will be waving the white flag to socialism. Let's go to the Mirror. 14 years of hurt never stopped us dreaming. Is it coming home? Keir Starmer yesterday vowed to give Britain hope and to restore our battered pride after 14 years of hurt under the Tories. The Daily Telegraph, big picture of Geoffrey Boycott there. Boycott, I am fighting cancer again. That's sad news, isn't it? But they've also got Johnson, it's not too late to stop Labour. And they've also got Labour plotting inheritance tax raid to redistribute wealth. It's like communist undertones there to that headline, aren't there? The Times, Johnson, big Labour win, is pregnant with horrors. He does have a turn of phrase on him, doesn't he? There we go. OK, all right, so those are your headlines. Let me just have a quick discuss of what's on the front of The Guardian. So the insinuation they are saying, or the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, apparently, is that, that by singling out someone for trying to observe the tradition of spending time with their family on Friday evenings, Marie van der Zyl, who was the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews until earlier this year, called the attacks horribly stigmatising. So for Jews of all denominations and their loved ones, it's really a sacred time. I get that. I do just wonder, though, Stephen, with respect, and this is, I am somebody who has been very vocal about, I think a rise in anti-Semitism in recent months in this country. I do wonder if this is a little bit desperate. I think Starmer, I don't think we're trying to make a virtue out of it being a Jewish occasion. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Wolf, Jewish name. Yeah. Jewish family members and myself, and I would never have, for a moment, have thought this was an anti-Semitic attack. I think it is a desperation from the Board of Deputies and really something they shouldn't have got involved in. Most people would not have known that his wife is Jewish. Most people would have not have read the kind of article about it being a dinner for a Jewish celebration on. They would have said he's stopping work just like we do on a Friday afternoon, and the arguments against him was that he's lazy. Well, I mean, that's what people would have seen it. And
I suppose there's because there has been, but in certain quarters, and again, I'm definitely not saying this is right, but there has been an insinuation that maybe he was keeping his wife out of the spotlight a little bit because you've got the whole Israel, Palestine, Gaza issue going on at the moment. She is of Jewish heritage, etc. That is what some people were saying when it came to him maybe shielding his family from it. So I find it a bit odd now that on the front of The Guardian they've got this, it's an anti-Semitic thing because his wife's Jewish. I find that...
Yeah, I think that's quite a stretch. I mean, he didn't actually say it was like for Shabbat. So I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have even made that insinuation myself. So that's quite far-fetched. I do think this idea that potentially he was trying to keep his wife out of the spotlight to not draw light on the sort of her connections or her feelings about the Israel-Gaza conflict as well. Again, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. I wouldn't put it past Keir Starmer, but I'd like to give him a bit more credit. I
think that's just a personal...
Yeah, I think he's just saying that, I think he's probably seen what being Prime Minister has done in terms of a work-life balance, and he's probably trying to maintain some semblance of it to be as productive as possible. I would say that if he's looking for work-life balance, he's in the wrong job.
OK, all right. I am just going to whiz it on a little bit because I just want to squeeze in another quick story if we can, but I'll come to you first on this, Andy. So Rishi Sunak has made a campaign trail pit stop at Beaconsfield Services. Can I just say that is a top services? It's one of my favourite services. Keele Services are also up there. It is. Newport Pagnell is another good service.
Warwick's quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Warwick all the way.
Wow.
OK, we've just gone full partridge. But anyway, so it was at McDonald's there this morning where he ordered a breakfast wrap alongside a pretty hefty miracle, I imagine. As polling day edges closer, look, can you spot what one outspoken Labour candidate found wrong with this clip of him handing Mackies to journos?
You want this wrap, porridge, bacon rolls, pancakes. Have we got muffins? Breakfast rolls. Right, breakfast rolls, bacon rolls, porridge. Who wants what?
I thought that looked quite normal, but not according to Dawn Butler, who tweeted, "Why is the food on the floor in the middle of the road? Who does that? Street food doesn't mean you eat it off the street. Is that how they think working class people act? What? Very offensive." Ridiculous.
Dawn Butler is such a bore. She always has been.
I was not expecting that from you.
She always has been. It's totally in character.
All right. I mean, I couldn't see that tweet because she's blocked me. However, I did think the same thing. Not that it's working. You're making an insinuation that it's working class eat off the floor. But I thought, why is food going into my mouth on the floor?
It's
like
bagged up.
Oh no!
Just people trying to find offence where there is none.
There's no offence.
To be honest, I don't follow Dawn Butler, so I would never even see that.
For me,
you're not missing much.
For me, that says something about the psychology of some of the people in the Labour Party, like Dawn Butler.
No, I think it says something about the psychology of a handful of people on the left of the Labour Party who want to take offence at anything at all.
Yeah, looking behind every tree.
The link to working class.
Yeah, I find that was all a bit weird, wasn't it?
You know, we share food in lots of different ways.
OK, now we're going to have to rattle through this. This is Greatest Britain and Union Jackass time, everybody. Can I get your Greatest Britain, please, Stephen?
Bellingham. For the fantastic goal.
Yeah, great. Short and sweet, but fantastic. Yeah, go on.
Could have come a bit sooner, but OK. Ed Sheeran for playing for the England team after they beat Slovakia.
OK, I think we might have a little clip of... No, I'm wrong about that, apparently. That was a hard no. OK, Andy, who's your Greatest Britain?
Andy Murray, who didn't play at Wimbledon today, but is basically one of our greatest ever sportsmen. 2 Wimbledons, 1 US Open, 2 Olympic gold medals, legend. Good
stuff. Now, one of the reasons why we had to be quick is because I've wasted all of your time, because I'm railroading over the top of this and giving today's Greatest Britain to Emily Carver, who is now my wife, because we got married on Sunday. And here's a little clip on for us when we did the old confetti thing. So here we go. Go on. Yes, I know I'm massively punching. OK, so well done anyway. Emily Carver, brackets Christys, is today's Greatest Britain. All right, now it's Union Jackass time, Stephen.
Bellingham again, this time. Bellingham for grabbing his crotch.
Okay.
It's just not necessary.
Not necessary. Well, you said cojones so far tonight. Go on, who's your Union Jack?
Lucy Letby, which is actually quite depressing because she's been found guilty of attempting to murder a baby girl, which is horrifying. Yeah. Horrifying.
Yeah. OK, go on, Andy.
A busker at Glastonbury who decided that Dua Lipa might actually want to listen to him.
And it's that man. You've won. That's right. Yes, OK, there we go.
Over the baby murderer?
Absolutely, yes.
Are you serious?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's not feeling all that much like July at the moment. Yes, there has been some sunshine around today, but temperatures have actually been around or a little bit below average for the time of year, and it is going to turn increasingly cloudy and wet as we go through tonight because of a system that's pushing its way southwards. Yes, there may be some clear skies to start the night in the south, but here it's going to turn very cloudy, and everywhere we are going to see a lot of cloud and then that rain pushing its way in. Some of that rain heavy across some parts of northern England. The cloud, the rain, and for some of us some blustery winds means temperatures are going to stay up, most places holding up in double figures. Bit of a soggy start then for many of us tomorrow morning. There could still be some heavy bursts of rain around, though most of that is going to clear away towards the east quite quickly. And in fact, by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning, across some central southern parts of England, there could be some drier, brighter weather around. A bit cloudier further north across other parts of England and Wales. And in fact, across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, we're going to see another band of rain pushing its way in. This rain could be quite persistent, though not especially heavy. A little bit drier first thing across eastern parts of Scotland, perhaps northeast England, but this band affecting western Scotland and Northern Ireland is gradually going to make its way east and southeastwards as we go through the day. So more places over northern England, Wales, southwest England, perhaps turning damp again as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere, there will be some drier weather around, cloudier towards the east, brighter skies towards the northwest with some showers mixed in, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, just about getting to the low 20s. On Thursday, there's going to be a bit of a north-south split. In the north,
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Using mobiles at the wheel, convictions have doubled.
Yeah, they have, and I think this is a good thing. You now can't do photos, videos, you can't be scrolling along, you can't be looking through audio lists, you can't be playing games, which people shouldn't be doing anyway.
Stop.
Really, really scary. I mean, I don't think we should have phones and screens, even your kind of audio maps, that kind of stuff in cars. I think that any screen that you are glancing at while you're meant to be driving is a distraction. I know what you'll say, oh, but what about maps? People need them for maps. They don't. In the old days, people drove their cars, because every time you take your eye off the wheel, off the road, you are endangering other...
Well, I think built-in screens are fine.
They're not fine.
No, they are.
My map actually comes up. My map actually comes up where the speedometer is, in the middle there. So
that's handy.
There.
Why is that safe? Why do you think that is safe, that you are glancing at a screen, at a map? I don't care where it is.
No.
Why is that
that's
safe?
no different to looking at the speedo.
I
See how
agree.
fast you're going. No, that's fine.
But also, what about cyclists on their phones? Shouldn't they be prosecuted?
We're not going to do whataboutery. You're not going to start attacking cyclists on this. I cycle around London with a vulnerable toddler on the back.
On your phone?
It is terrifying. Of course I don't. Do you think I would take my phone out and look at my phone? It is insane when cyclists do that, and I often say to them, for goodness sake, I just say, for goodness sake. But when I'm alongside a lorry or a big van and I see someone looking at their phone or picking up their phone or checking their notifications, it is terrifying. You have no idea. None of you cycle. You don't know how vulnerable you feel when a car is moving kind of that way. In fact,
you're very brave taking your toddler on a cycle, to be honest with you.
All I mean is you're in charge of a death-creating machine.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. You're with GB News. I'm Polly Middlehurst. In a moment, headliners, but first let's bring you the latest news headlines. And with just 2 days to go until the